Virgin River recap. What happened to Mark Monroe in Virgin River? Virgin River is a romance drama series, and it follows nurse Mel Monroe as she tries to make a new life for herself. What happened to Mark Monroe in Virgin River? Large part of Virgin River's story, particularly in the first season, included flashbacks experienced by Mel as she walked viewers through how she came to meet her husband. At the start of the debut season, fans saw Mel moving to Virgin River having accepted a new job, and she had left her old life behind. She had hinted she blamed herself for the loss of her husband, but the reason for his absence was not revealed until much later on. The first few flashbacks showed Mel meeting Mark as a patient, as she had been involved in an accident. The pair later realized they both worked in a hospital, and Mark plucked up the courage to ask Mel out. As the series progressed, the flashbacks showed Mel and Mark as a happy couple as they were just starting to settle down. Things started to take a turn when they discovered they were unable to conceive children at childbirth. The pair had started IVF, and in one of Mel's later flashbacks, she was seen arguing in the car with Mark about the fertility treatment. The stillbirth and fertility issues put a terrible strain on their relationship, and Mel had threatened to end their marriage. She had been asking Mark to take part in another round of IVF, but he was more concerned about rescuing their relationship. When Mel threatened to leave Mark, he took his eyes off the road and tried to convince her to change her mind. As he looked away, he drove straight into the path of an oncoming car, and Mel was heard screaming his name before the screen turned to black. In another flashback, Mel ran through a hospital corridor, covered in blood, begging the hospital staff to let her see her husband. She was also seen receiving the tragic news from one of the doctors her husband had not made it through, despite their best efforts. From then on, Mel had continued to blame herself for her husband's death, despite the fact her family reassured her there was nothing she could have done, and she was not at fault. Her husband's death was one of the reasons to a relationship with Jack, despite everyone noticing they were fond of each other. Over time, Mel opened up to Jack about the loss of her husband, and although he was understanding and supportive, he tried to encourage her to stop blaming herself. In an emotional scene, Mel was finally ready to say goodbye to her husband, and she made a fitting tribute to Mark, who had a love of sailing. She asked Hope McCree and Ed O'Toole to make a sail out of one of his old t-shirts, and she attached it to an old model sailing boat before releasing the boat into the water. For the first time since Mark's death, she also removed her wedding ring, telling Jack she felt it was time to move on. In season 2, there had been a moment when fans thought she had fallen back into a state of grief when she received some forwarded mail addressed to Mark. The mail arrived just as she was starting to accept her feelings for Jack, and they had shared some passionate moments together. Thankfully, it did not take long for Mel to bounce back from the incident, and she was able to continue her romance with Jack. Sadly, Jack too suffered a terrible fate by a mystery killer at his own bar. Fans are yet to see whether Jack survived the shooting, as Mel arrived just in time to call for help.